Hello, and welcome to Knackly's instructional video on comparing and preparing documents for automation. In this part one, we will show you how to compare two different versions of a document you may have and create a base template for that you will start with automating. So to start out with, I have two versions of a document here that I would use in different situations. And these are actually just pulled from Utah forms. One I have made some changes to so that we can see how the comparison works. So if you see, I've got a document with this language in it, and I know that this other document has some differences in the language. So what I want to do is I want to compare the two and see where the differences are and then make choices about what language I want to keep, what provisions I want to keep. So to start out with, I want to actually make my base document where I'm going to make my changes. So I'm going to save this as, in this folder, I'm going to make a new folder where I'm going to keep all of my prepared base templates that I'm going to be automating later. So I'm going to call this base, actually I'm just going to call it templates. And then here, instead of having version 1 or version 2, I'm going to call it the Affidavit of Jurisdiction of Divorce template. So we'll save that. And this is the one I'm going to make my final changes to. So then I want to, in Word, when you compare a document, you want to go to Review. And over here you'll see this Compare button. If you click on that and you do compare two versions of a document, legal blackline. So I'm going to find the first document I'm going to compare, which is in here. So I'm going to start with version 1. And then I'm also going to put in there version 2. And what this does is Word goes through and compares the two documents and shows you where the changes are. My preferred preferences, I usually do have all of these boxes checked, but for now, since we're only comparing, just doing the line edit, looking at the actual word, the changes in the language, I'm going to leave these unchecked, so we'll only see, where words have been changed. I like using the word level and showing it in a new document. To me, that's easier to go through and kind of look at the changes. So with those settings in, I'm going to click OK, and Word will create this new document, which I do like to save as a comparison so that I have it just in case, something happens or I want to go back to it. So I'm going to say Affidavit of Jurisdiction, compare version 1 to version 2. And when you're saving these comparisons, it is really useful to note what you're comparing to in the title, because then you don't have to go back to it, months later and figure out, okay, what two documents was I comparing here? So I'll save my comparison. And then some settings you can kind of look through. You want markup showing. I like having all these, you want all these clicked so that you can know where everything is. Balloons is where you kind of choose, as that tooltip says, whether you have revisions in balloons or all inline, or you can kind of pick which one you like. I'll show you the difference. So with everything in balloons, you can see it still does have some line edits, but it has, when you delete something, it has it in a balloon or changes. And for this document, I'm actually going to, I think, select have all revisions inline, because then I can see what's been crossed out and what's been added all inline. There are situations where I keep things, in balloons, and situations where I keep things inline. It just depends on the document that you're comparing. So this is the comparison. And if I go to my template, nope, that's not my template. Here's my template. So if if I go to my template, and my template, I believe, was I saved a version 2 or 1. It doesn't really matter because you can make the changes in it. So if I look at I'll exit out of this to be clear. So if I look at my comparison, I can see there's change here where I've struck this sentence. So then I want to decide here, do I want to keep that sentence or do I want to strike it and keep it out? In that case, I believe I'm going to, I think I'll keep that one. So what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm going to, and this is why I saved the comparison, so I can go through and see what I've changed and make the actual changes. So I'm going to add this because it's not in my template. I'm going to add that back in because I've decided that I want to keep that part. And then I'm going to look at the next changes. And it's one thing that's really useful if you use this next button. It'll take you through each change in order, which if you're doing a particularly long document can be very, very useful. So I'm going to look at the next changes, and it looks like I've added a comma from this document. So I'll look at the one I'm going to be changing, and I can see that I've added or taken away. It depends. You can say added or taken away. It looks like in version 1 I had this language added, and in version 2 it was taken away. So it looks like in version 1 I had this comma Utah, and the divorce petition was filed on blank, blank, blank. And when I look back at this, I'm going to decide I want to keep this how it is. So I'm going to reject that change, reject that change, reject that change. And really that's what you do when you're going through and comparing them. You just go through and look at the changes that you've made and decide, what do I want to keep? What do I want to toss? What's the best language that I want to have in my final version? And you can also decide, so for maybe there's some things in there that you want in some situations and not in other situations. So let's look at this one where I've decided, so number 4, it has we, and it looks like in one of the versions I instead have petitioner responded and I. So I may have decided that, in one version in one situation I want this language, and in the other situation I want the we language. So what I would do for that is put both pieces of language in there. And for now, I'm just going to highlight them and say, this is moving into markup, which our next video will be on markup. But this is one thing that you do want to do when you're comparing them is if you've got any bits or paragraphs or sections that are optional, then you want to make sure and have those in your base template and have them marked as this is something I want in different situations. So what I would do for this is do a comment and have it be optional if I represent respondent, or actually I'm going to say if case is not filed. So if I'm going to say if I haven't filed this case yet, or this divorce it's no one's filed yet, we know what's going to happen, then I want that language. And then I'm going to also say a comment optional if case has been filed. And that, when you go through and do markup, will be really useful for you to know when I want this language, when I want this other language, when I want different things in there. So that is how you do a basic comparison in Word. And I hope you find this helpful, and you can find out more about document automation and what we do here at go.knackly.io. Thank you. This has been Whitney Olson with Knackly.